Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the January 4th, 2019 South Coast Air Quality Management District Board meeting. I'd like for everyone to rise and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Do we have any opening comments by any of my colleagues? Mr. Nastri, do you have anything to say this morning? Then we will adjourn the meeting.
Happy New Year.
Okay. I first would like to thank Ms. Mitchell.
One thing, that just before Christmas, I was invited along with some of our staff people to attend a press conference where they announced what we called the co-creation between Penske Truck Leasing and Daimler Truck, who are putting on our roads electric vehicles for drayage and for heavy duty eventually. I mean, well, drayage plus the heavier duty cycle. So that was an exciting event because you saw two entities coming together, the truck leasing company, which actually has the trucks, and Daimler is the manufacturer, and working together to help us get to, clean electric trucks on our roads. So it was an exciting event.
Any other comments? I'd like to thank Dr. Parker for filling in his chair at the January meeting. I would have preferred to have been here, but unfortunately, I had a situation I had to go to Cleveland to deal with. I'd also like to thank all the people who expressed condolences over my sister's passing. I appreciate it no end. And I guess that was Matt's suit for memorial services that he wore that day, but we don't. If he went down to the ghetto where I was at, he'd have never made it home with that suit on. But we did have another passing that I would like to call attention to, because board member Caccioti's assistant, who was here last month and participated in the meeting because, like I told Clark, I watched on the webcast from Cleveland. In fact, I was getting ready to go into the service, and I was still watching the meeting. But I saw him, and he was here and looked as vibrant, and Dave will be greatly missed, and I think that we ought to send some kind of acknowledgement to his family that we appreciated his service, not only to the district, but to the community at large. With all that being said, we will move to the consent calendar.
Dr. Burke?
Dr. Burke, if you,
Yes.
Board Member Benoit would like
Yes.
to be sworn in.
if you'd like to keep me for another 4 years, that is.
Well, there's good news and bad news. Come on. Where are we going to do this, Ben? Oh, down there. Okay.
Down there. That was my third time. You just do it back here, Paul.
Hey. You know, the Christmas holidays are kind of bittersweet for me,
Me too.
and I know for you too. Your father and I were in the hospital at the same time, and I talked to him 24 hours before he passed. And I know how much he loved you know, and I know how proud he would be of you at this moment, as he was all the time. You know, he made me jealous because he had a son as well as a daughter, and it was a special relationship, and he was a special fellow, and so are you.
Thank you.
So it's my pleasure to swear you in. Would I, and please state your name,
I, Benjamin Joseph Benoit,
during such times as I hold the above office,
during such times as I hold the above office,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the great state of California,
that I will take this obligation freely
that I will take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you very much, and welcome aboard again.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I may say a few words real quickly.
Yes, of course.
I think this is my third time being sworn into this body, and I had the pleasure last 4 years ago of my dad swearing me in. And in the last 4 years, life has changed a lot for my family, and I just want to express my appreciation to the board member, my colleagues here, especially the chair, of all the support you guys have given me over the years, and how much I've really enjoyed serving on this board. It's a board that, when I first got here, I think like my father and like a lot of us that maybe sit on the other side of the aisle, thought, well, there's something here we need to work on. And no, I think this board has been doing an amazing job for a long time. And it really is an amazing opportunity to serve on it, and I really appreciate serving on it. And I can't think of a better place to be while I'm also on my city council other than here. And it really is something that's been really special to serve on. And I'm looking forward to the next 4 years and all the hard work we're going to have to do, and another one of these AQMPs, and oh my gosh, all the other fun work that goes along with this. But I can't tell you how excited I am to have the opportunity for my county to serve my cities and my county for another 4 years. So thank you for having me, and I appreciate being here.
And you bring a unique set of skills to this board which don't go unnoticed. And we appreciate it very much. Thank you. Okay, moving to the consent. Oh, Mayor Mitchell, I'm sorry. And then Dr.
I
Wu.
just need to recuse myself from agenda item number 6 because of a financial interest in AT&T Corporation, which is affected by this item.
Dr. Liu?
Yeah, similar issue. I have to recuse myself from agenda item number 2 because of potential conflict with Bloom Energy Corporation, Clean Energy Fuels, Port of Long Beach, Southern California Gas Company, TransPower, University of Southern California and BYD, company BYD Motors, because they're potential sources of income materially affected by this item. And on item number 6, I'm recusing myself because of a financial interest in AT&T Corporation, materially affected by this item. And I'm recusing myself from agenda item number 10 because of a financial interest in Google, which is materially affected by this item. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Dr. Burke, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
for agenda item number 2, regarding CBAG Regional PM10 street sweeping operations, I do not have a financial interest, but I'm required to identify for the record that I am an executive committee member for Coachella Association of Governments, which is involved in this item. And aside from that, Dr. Burke, regarding the LCAL specialty contracting, residential energy efficiency retrofit project. Just want to thank you, Dr. Burke, for that phone call, for reminding me of this effort, as well as staff for working with us and ensuring that this effort is funded. But I just wanted to make it, put it on record that I like staff when we're talking about any recommendations when dealing with metrics. That we think about local jobs and how local jobs are created in the community to this effort, and as well ensure that underserved and hard-to-reach communities and households benefit from this program. I know that there's also discussion about metrics regarding this program, and I wanted to make sure that those two are part of that. And those are my points, Dr. Burke.
Thank you so much. And in keeping with that, I've had discussions with the executive director, and he has assured me that if the projects meet the expectations of the staff in their performance, that he is going to search around for even more funds to augment that program. Is that the reflection of our conversation?
Yes, sir, and we would report back to the board and bring it back to the board for their consideration.
So it's
Perfectly fine with me.
it's something worth doing.
Thank you, Dr. Burke.
Okay, so we have everybody off the speaker roll. So we are now down to the consent calendar. May I get a motion on the consent calendar? Do we let me ask legal first. Do we have enough members here to pass these items with the abstentions?
Yes, Dr. Burke, we have a quorum of 7 for all the items, including number 6.
Okay.
I'll move the item, I'll move the consent calendar.
We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chair, you have a number of requests to speak on the consent calendar items.
I'm sorry.
Speakers, public speakers.
Speakers? You have speakers for the items?
Your iPad?
On the iPad.
Oh, they're on the
Item
iPad.
2.
You're both looking for the cards.
Hey. Let's see, consent calendar. Okay. We have on item number 2, Bruce Bearwager. Would you come to the microphone? And Greg Sutliff, would you come to the other vacant microphone?
Good morning. My name is Bruce Burwager, and I'm the Vice President of Operations for Beta Offshore, an independent oil production company that has over 150 employees and contractors working on 3 offshore oil production platforms in federal waters about 8 miles off the coast of Huntington Beach. We are in the South Coast Air District. We currently self-generate most of our power needs with natural gas augmented by diesel, and as such, this is our primary emission source, much like a power plant. As I'm sure you know, the California legislature passed and the governor signed into law AB 617 in July of 2017. This law is the primary impetus for the district's incentive funding program. AB 617 requires districts that are in non-attainment for any criteria air pollutant to adopt an expedited schedule for the implementation of best available retrofit control technology by each industrial source. And I want to emphasize that term. Industrial source is what's actually written in the legislation. And it further says that these industrial sources that as of January 1st, 2017, were subject to a specified market-based compliance mechanism, such as the reclaim program for NOx emissions, and to give highest priority to those permitted units that have not modified emission-related permit conditions for the greatest period of time. The expedited schedule for the implementation of best available retrofit control technology is to be by the earliest feasible date, but in any event, no later than December 31st, 2023. My concern is that the project selection process for awarding the incentive funded did not really align with the intent of AB 617. Put simply, why aren't the funds being used where the greatest industrial source emission reduction can be achieved on an accelerated schedule, as called for in AB 617? No funding is provided for potential expedited elimination and control of emitting equipment on our platforms. Of the $61 million of incentive funding that was to be allocated to emission reduction projects under the RFP, approximately 80% was collected from rules applying solely to stationary sources, yet only 67% of the funding is proposed to be awarded to projects at stationary sources, and of that, only 20% is being awarded to industrial sources, hardly fulfilling the intent of AB 617. Our proposed project will achieve more than 10% of the district's 2024 NOx basin-wide reduction goal of 4.8 tons per day from stationary sources, and it would do it on an accelerated schedule if incentive funding is provided. I implore you and the staff to reconsider application of the incentive funding. Our project makes a major contribution toward meeting the district's goals and toward compliance with the intent of AB 617. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would Greg Sutliff come to the, okay? How about Carla De La Cruz from the Sierra Club come to the other microphone? Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Burke and members of the board and staff. Good morning. My name is Greg Sutliff, and I'm the Director of the Home Services for Alcal Specialty Contracting. We are part of a division of Pacific Coast Building Products, which is a California family-owned business operating here in California since 1953. Alcal itself employs over 600 people in our branches in California and the Southwest, and we are a union shop, and we put great focus on workforce development and training. We submitted 2 proposals that would use energy efficiency to both help the AQMD meet its air quality goals and achieve important co-benefits, including improvements in public health and economic improvements via reduced utility bills and job growth. Thank you for your additional consideration of our proposals, and we appreciate the additional effort that the staff and the board have put towards considering our both of our proposals, especially in the Coachella Valley and San Fernando Valley. We had hoped that the AQMD would fully fund both projects so that the maximum number of homes could be completed in the shortest possible time, so that Alcal could open a whole new branch in both areas to serve those communities. But we understand that the staff recommendation was only for 25% of the requested funding. Unfortunately, we tried to secure additional funding through partnerships, and we were unable to locate in this amount of time additional funds that could help with the co-op portion of the footnote of the requirement on the appropriation. So some of the organizations that we reached out to included the NRDC, the EDF, SoCal Edison, and we've got a lot of support for our work, but we don't have any commitment of co-funding. So we've been kind of left with a reduced amount of homes that can be impacted by our projects, and consequently a reduced amount of probably hiring and economic activity that we can generate with what we've been approved for. So what I'd like to ask is that the AQMD fully fund those programs, the proposals as we've put forth. And if that's not possible, then at least remove the contingent co-funding so that we can move forward with doing some of the retrofits on some of the homes in these areas. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions that might come up either from staff or from the board. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would Harvey Etter please come to the vacant microphone? Mr. De La Cruz?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Burke. Good morning and Happy New Year, board members. It is 2019 and it is a brand new year. I will keep my comments short because we do have some other volunteers with the Sierra Club speaking today on some other items. But today I would like to just emphasize that in 2019 and moving forward, we really should not be investing in fossil fuel technology, including millions of dollars continuing to go to natural gas. Obviously, the grid and the reliability and the stability of the grid is of importance, but as these technologies improve, we really should be looking at how the technologies can be powerful demonstration projects to show the viability that this technology is ready. I will point to your own staff's recommendation that when Glendale applied for battery storage for the stationary source, it achieved one of the highest scores of your own criteria, and yet it was not included in one of the projects listed. Obviously, money is limited and funding is also limited, but as we continue to fund clean energy for $3 million and fund natural gas in the millions, we really need to start investing equally, if not more boldly, in battery electric as well as truly renewable, truly zero emission technology. So thank you again, and I look forward to working with you and your staff throughout the new year. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Etter?
Good morning. Happy New Year. My name's Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition. Would like to echo what the gentleman just said from the Sierra Club. I've also worked with the Sierra Club since '92. Anyway, we put in a $61 million proposal for solar conversion, ASAP, as is reflected in our litigations going back to on the 91 plan, on the 12 plan, and on the 16 plan. We turned in the proposal that was illegible and was not evaluated. First of all, it was only a month or two ago that they said it was illegible. Before, they said that this includes also, I've been talking to BYD for a couple of years. They said they can manufacture 5,000 Class 8 trucks a year, and they were saying they needed 6 months to do it in. I'm talking to them about that and about solar power for it. They're looking at building some plants and manufacturing facilities anyway, and been talking with BYD. Staff knows this. They evaluated this as a stationary source versus a mobile source, so we didn't get the emissions, and it was only later that they said this thing about they couldn't read it. They could read it, and I asked if I should type it up and bring it in there. I believe what was said was, we can't advise you because you've got a submission, but they said there wasn't a submission, so there's a contradiction there. Again, fossil fuels are on their way out. We need equitable, just, immediate as possible total solar conversion. And this was put out there in the 40 exhibits that we put in for the Solar New Deal. That was a result of working with staff, senior staff, and the board's request of Dr. Burke. Anyway, this does not cut it. There's potential here to really, do something different, and that's not what's happening, and it's got to be challenged. The process was not kosher. I tried to go to these meetings to find out how the decision was being made and was told this and that were changing. Information was not available as happened in the past. This is no way to run an airline or allegedly the world's premium air quality district.
You have
I'm
any
not a happy
comments?
camper and
Does
very
staff
upset.
have any comments on that? So here they just given me a missile, you can blame her, she's actually the Carol. Yes, we're gonna point a target on her back. Said that you signed up for item 2, 3, 4, 7, 9, 11, 18, 19, 20, and 21.
And I just spoke 3 minutes on this.
Now, so, what, I didn't know this, so what do we do on the time thing, Mr. Legal Counsel? So you get it off the person who just bought me this list.
So, because he,
Even though she really did rat Harvey out.
one option, Mr. Chair, at your discretion, you could choose to exercise discretion to give him additional time to address the other items. I think that would be the safest course to do. And
So on 2, 3, 4, 7, 9, 11, 18, 19, 20, and 21, which is 10 items. So I should give him another half hour?
no, sir. You
I'm
could give
trying
him,
to understand your direction.
you could give him an additional 3 minutes for all of those items, and I guess in the future, we'll try to focus, and with the first time he
'Cause we
speaks, we
got a
can ask him how
computer
many
here.
times.
You know, I tell you what, I'm gonna let you keep count of Harvey's time. How's that? So you and Harvey can argue it out if you don't. On second
Is
thought,
this
you'll
an
feel it.
example of your management capabilities?
Who should be the time?
Should we put on fisticuffs
Who do
like
we not
Lewis and Clay? Anyway,
Harvey,
what?
I'm gonna give you some extra time.
So
Okay.
I should just talk quick on everything for now, right? So I got 3 minutes and we're
You
allotted
got
6
3
minutes on
minutes.
all items?
I'm gonna give you 4 minutes.
4 minutes?
4 minutes, but you gotta go through the rest of them. So you need to emphasize that you care about the most. And by the way, the solar installation on my house is starting next week.
Oh, congratulations.
So, you know, you got through to at least one guy,
Okay.
okay?
Well,
Okay, so on items 3, 4, 7, 9, 11, 18, 19, 20, and 21, you have 4 minutes.
Okay. I didn't really do my homework on this stuff and look at it like yesterday or the day before, but Health Affix, number 4. We had an exchange at the Administrative or Legislative Committee where I understood that they were you directed health staff to look at natural gas as toxic. It's on the record. So I'm not clear whether this is included in there, that we must look at taxes, toxics, benzene, formaldehyde, carcinogens, deaths per million per year.
That was at the direction of the admin committee meeting. Yeah, that took place.
Okay, so hopefully if that's not included in this, it should be, and a direction, to do that as well, and I'd like to be clear on that. On number 7, this pre-qualified, this document conversion, I don't know if that's shredding or what. I'm concerned about legal implications of doing anything to documents. On number 9, I see you've got a community relations manager and someone working on information. And public affairs manager. These with CCAs and public solar power, it's important. It's happening at the district now. We've got Los Angeles County, and there's representing on the board, but different folks, and we also have Ventura County and Orange County is nibbling, and there's also in Riverside and San Bernardino. So it should be dealt with at the district. So also want to incorporate everything that happened in the different committees that we addressed this past month and want to continue to do so this month. Let's see. So, damn, I don't know. I don't know if I can use the whole 4 minutes. I wasn't prepared and didn't have enough time to think on it. So for community relations manager, CCAs, okay, investor-owned utilities, their existence is threatened. They're on their way out. They're from 120 years ago. LADWP is the largest municipal-owned system in the country. 20% of the power in the state is public power. Sacramento, where the legislature, that's public power. They had a nuke up there. They voted it out. They're doing solar stuff. There was original intent of OII 42, the first solar looked at it, the Public Utilities Commission, to look at all models. That was not done, and it was not done through the Brown administration. There was stuff done on 6 cities were doing municipal solar utilities. It was over at the Energy Commission. I worked as a consultant on low income and with the Energy Commission and the PUC and other state agencies and whatnot. And I had to bring this stuff rather than the state CEC doing it. So right now with the fires, and that's from climate change, it's going to keep on happening. We haven't dealt with the cost of nuclear waste, neither is the federal government, but that is not in the rate base. They're on their way out. They're bankrupt. Okay, PG&E went bankrupt. Back when Enron was hustling, and $42 billion was spent of state money, according to the Public Policy Institute's report of 2003 by Christopher Ware. At least $42,000 of state general funds money and Department of Water Resources, and it's probably up at 100 or 200 billion that we subsidize this. It's time to phase them out and the state take over this. I understand San Diego is interested in managing a T&D system. They could bid on it like anybody else. Anyway, I think we got to take the bigger picture now. These studies coming out, local, state, and federal, about climate change and the implications of it. Exchange. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. That concludes the testimony on that item.
Mr. Chair?
How do I tell?
Mr. Chair, Dr.
Oh, I see. All these were
Someone
Harvey
else.
on the rest of these. They're all, okay. So that concludes testimony on the consent calendar.
Dr. Burke, I think there may be one other individual out there was wondering how they can, where to submit so they can speak.
Sign up at the queues at the back of the auditorium.
Want to go ahead and state that out loud so they can hear you? They wanted to speak on item number 2 as well.
So there's no more cards. You sign up outside on an iPad, and it gets directly sent over to Dr. Burke.
Mr. Chair, it sounds like there's one more speaker. If he could go ahead and speak and then fill the iPad, or sign up afterwards.
Who is that speaker? Come on down.
Yeah.
I just signed on public comments as well, so. I just signed on public comments, so I can wait.
No, oh, you signed, but you want to speak on the consent calendar?
On 2. Or it was, no, it's on the
number
comments.
2?
Do it now, or you're not gonna have an opportunity later.
Okay. So, my name's Alex Solis. I'm policy coordinator for Comité Cívico del Valle. We're here in support of, we're here today to ask the board's consideration for further funding of the Coachella Valley project, as it will directly benefit the residents, particularly the disadvantaged communities therein, while delivering emission reductions of PM 2.5 and GHGs. Coachella Valley project's inclusion of added energy efficiency measures will not only directly benefit the residents of eastern Coachella Valley, as it will also steer these communities on the path towards achieving the goals set forth by California's leading climate change and energy policies such as AB 617 and SB 100. It is our position that the Coachella Valley project can also bring local jobs and promote community involvement, education, and awareness through partnerships with local environmental nonprofit organizations to ensure these funds reach the disadvantaged communities most affected by climate change and in need of these resources. We support the funding of the Coachella Valley project and appreciate the board's time and consideration of Comité Cívico del Valle's comments on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I assume you heard our conversation
Yes.
about that funding before, during the board discussion.
Yes, I got here a little bit after.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our testimony on the consent calendar. If I could get a motion on the consent calendar, do I need to bring Dr. Liu back in?
He's right there, but either way, we're good, sir.
Okay. I don't want you to feel insignificant, Doctor. Okay.
Motion is already.
Oh, motion's already been made, and we have a second. Would the clerk open the roll?
I have a question. If we've recused ourselves from an item, what do we do here?
If it's not been pulled from the consent, then you would just, stay seated and you don't have to leave.
No voting.
Yeah, you would
But I
not
wouldn't
be,
vote on this.
no, you would vote, but you would be essentially abstaining just from that item.
From
So
that
you would
item,
vote
okay.
from everything else.
All right, thank you.
That's the way it would be recorded.
Okay, close roll. It's 9 yeses, no, 0 noes. The result is that the consent calendar does pass. Okay, items 11 through, how about 22?
18 through 22, we just did.
Yeah. I'm sorry, 18 through 22.
Move
No.
approval.
Oh, wait a minute. No, I have no public comment on those.
I'll move approval.
And just want to make sure that we get the errata for the Stationary Source Committee minutes that was circulated by staff in that motion.
That's the blue sheet? Yes.
I'll include that in my motion.
I'm not sure I understand this, Dr. Liu. Would you explain this to me?
Yeah, it's just on the minutes under other business, it said there was no other business, but I actually had brought up another business item under that, on that day.
Yeah, would you explain the business item you brought up?
Staff had issued 4 fence line monitoring plans for public comment over the holidays, gave a 2-week comment deadline. They were very long, detailed plans, and people had asked for an extension of the deadline, so I asked if staff was going to extend the deadline. They said they were. That was about it.
Okay, no problem. Would you, clerk, open the roll? Item passes 9-0 with 4 absent. Okay, the next item will be 23. Is there a staff presentation? Since it was continued from our December 7th meeting?
Yes, there is, Dr. Burke.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Mike Kraus. I'm Planning Rules Manager here at the district. Today I'm introducing you today to a new proposed rule, 1118.1. This is controlling the emissions from non-refinery flares. Okay, by way of background, these flares are combusting unused gas generated at landfills, wastewater treatment facilities, oil and gas sites, as well as facilities that handle organic liquids. As an alternative to flaring, this gas can be beneficially used in areas such as like energy production or pipeline injection back to the gas company or possibly transportation fuels. The objective of this rule is to reduce nitrogen oxide emissions, which you know is the driver that we need in order to meet the ozone standards. We reduce those emissions from those non-refinery flares is our objective. We're also going to be implementing 2 of control measures that we had in our 2016 AQMP, CMB03 and CMB05. One was directing us to generate a rule of an unregulated source, which this is, and another one also helps to create an additional landing rule for those reclaimed facilities transitioning into a command and control regulatory approach. Now, we initiated this rule development back in June 2017, and staff has been quite busy. We've had 9 working group meetings with a group of affected stakeholders. That included presentations from 4 alternative technology manufacturers, and also presentations from 3 of our own stakeholders that are affected by this rule within our working group. We went out to the field and did 20 site visits to various effective types of facilities, which we have listed here. And as with most rules, or new rules that is, both the staff and the working group had to come up with a number of iterations to the rule. It isn't something that just kind of comes out. It has to kind of grow organically, and we have to sometimes have trial and error. In such a case as this, we looked at things such as maybe regulating this industry or these facilities based on the age of the flare, or possibly generate target goals for beneficial use. There were challenges to the industry in accepting some of these concepts. It was due to certain uncertainties or concerns with enforcement consequences, and eventually we landed on a capacity threshold concept, which I'll explain in a moment. The first step in developing a new rule is establishing the goals of that rule. In this particular case, we wanted to first recognize that we wanted to minimize routine flaring. We didn't want to affect those types of facilities that possibly have flares needed for emergencies or standby or possibly backup. So therefore, we established a capacity threshold for each of those affected types of sources. This threshold then would define whether that facility is routinely flaring. The second thing we wanted to do was maximize emission reductions, as is their general goal. Therefore, by setting that threshold to achieve the maximum threshold, in concert with it being cost-effective for that facility to take action, is how we establish each of the thresholds for each of the different source type categories. And then finally, we wanted to encourage beneficial use, which was as discussed in the control measure in the plan. One of the things that the stakeholders resonated to us is that a lot of them believe that beneficial use is a common theme amongst their industries. It is something they do want to achieve. They want to profit from some of that gas that they're handling. However, they also emphasize the need to have appropriate and reasonable timeframes in order to make that happen. This particular rule will be affecting 153 facilities with a total of 295 flares. As you can see in the pie chart, we break down the number of flares per source category. It's discovered, as you can see here, both the open and the closed landfills have the greatest number of flares, gas throughput, and corresponding NOx emissions. The category of other flaring, we learned, kind of breaks down to a number of things when it comes to handling organic liquids, such as maybe the loading of marine vessels or rail cars or trucks, as well as the storage at places such as tank farms. Overall, the emission reductions from this rule or estimating is at 0.2 tons per day. And I just want to emphasize here that's a very conservative number, because that number was based upon current activity at those facilities. So therefore, this does not include any potential increases of these existing facilities and their future activity, which may cause them to exceed the capacity threshold and thus would be required to take action. It also does not include any potential new flares that come into the basin in the future that will again be subject to certain limits. The general approach to the rule is to break out between provisions for existing flares as well as different provisions if you were a new flare. We designed the rule to provide compliance options that encourage the beneficial use as opposed to just replacing the flare with a cleaner flare. We recognize the fact that timeframes are needed both when you apply for a replacement flare as well as maybe extended time if you need to make the appropriate plans for a flare reduction type project. And both of those allow for extensions. We also wanted to account for different operational constraints at the different types of facilities. What I mean by that is that some of the facilities might have consistent gas production. Some have better gas quality. Some might have a production that's very energy intensive and thus be more encouraging to go in that direction for beneficial use. And then finally, of course, we kept in mind the cost effectiveness of doing any of these types of projects. So what happens when someone is evaluating their capacity threshold or their flare? Well, if they don't exceed their capacity threshold, no further action is required. However, if they do exceed their capacity threshold, they have a number of options that I have listed here. First off, they can possibly demonstrate their existing flare already meets the cleaner or backed level emission limits that we have in the rule. They would need a source test to prove that up, but it's a simple process. The second thing they could do is possibly increase their beneficial use. I've listed here some examples of energy generation that could occur on site, such as through microturbines or engines, fuel cells, or something even Dr. Liu introduced to us recently at the stationary source being on bioplastics. And finally, pipeline injection. And then the last option could be they could just replace the flare with the newer, cleaner flares that currently do exist out in the market. Just wanted to note, however, that recently we've applied some throughput limits on oil and gas facilities. So if you're coming in to replace those flares, there will be some set limitations. We see that because of the different types of gas quality, the cleaner gas quality those oil and gas facilities have, as well as sort of a general goal that they have, for example, the World Bank, to have a zero flaring initiative by 2030. And in concert with that, we wanted to maintain those themes here locally. As with all new rules, we also have other requirements applied, such as source testing or monitor and record keeping, as well as exemptions for low use or low emitting. We also want to recognize that closed landfills, as they sort of degrade, they're emitting less gas, and the quality also becomes more challenging to make use beneficially. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that there wasn't any sort of double jeopardy for these facilities, so any of the flares that are already subject to other SCAQMDs would not be impacted by this rule. Recently, there was a key issue that was raised at the December Stationary Source Committee meeting. SIPA, or the California Independent Petroleum Association, was concerned about SCAQMD's authority to establish these throughput limits on the oil and gas facilities, particularly when they're installing a best available control technology or a backed piece of equipment. Our response to that is that the SCAQMD does have authority, of course, as we've done with many of our rules, of establishing a limit that we do here in the rule. We don't believe this is a violation of our Constitution's taking clause, because in that clause, it allows for, it says the limiting factor is allowing for reasonable use of property. However, we believe that we are still allowing a reasonable use of the property. To give you an example, the limit that we're applying for someone who's replacing their flare, the limit will be based upon their past activity already at that site, plus an increase for growth based on its 10%. So we do believe that we fall and allow that reasonable use. And then finally, to remind everyone that operators can still use their gas beneficially. That choice is not being limited by the rule, and they can use that option to minimize their flaring. Finally, you'll notice in the resolution that we have some language on some commitments to staff. We want to conduct some technology assessments. The first one that was raised is to take a look at the effects to flaring from biogas that is being generated from food waste diversion, particularly the advanced type of technologies that are out there today. And we would want to report back to our stationary source within 1 year. And there was also recently raised about doing a tech assessment on what other kind of technologies are out there and the cost to beneficially using the gas, particularly in the oil and gas production sites. And again, report back to the Stationary Source Committee. So our staff recommendation today is to certify our final environmental assessment, that's the CEQA document, for proposed Rule 1118.1, adopt the resolution, and adopt the new proposed rule. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from my colleagues? You know something that there is a reaction by the public every time they see a flare. I don't know if it's the smell or it's the sight of fire or it's it's obviously a deep-rooted psychological reaction. Because I think the switchboards get lit up here more by a flare than any other single thing that I know of. So when we're passing these anti-flare rules or modified flare rules, I would think that there should be some effort on our part to educate the public on what's going on in that flare. If it's a flare which allows the burning of gas in a non-hazardous manner, that's one thing. But if the flare is spewing hazardous material into the community, that's a whole different thing. And I've never, in the 25 years I've been here, heard us discuss any kind of education process for the public or alert process for the public as it relates to these. So can someone just take a minute and explain to me why?
Maybe I can take a first attempt at that and then have staff provide some additional information. We actually, when we go out to various communities, have these issues raised to us. So for instance, in the Wilmington, Carson, Long Beach area, flaring refinery operations are oftentimes raised as issues. And we do talk about the operations. And oftentimes there'll be people from the facilities there to also talk about what the intent is. So we do provide direct responses to the public when we're out in the communities addressing their questions.
How do we go to the public? Do we just put it on our website?
Well, a lot of times, and this is what I think 617 really gets to, is that we reach out to the community members. We try to work with community organizers to help us increase the number of participants from the community that are attending these meetings. And we actually work with these community members to help identify what the actual agenda is, what are their concerns. And in the very first round of meetings that we held, we actually had community members identify sources for us. So we get a lot of input from the community, and in part what we're doing is getting the community's concerns and then developing what we have prepared in response. Ultimately, as was discussed earlier, we'll be preparing community mission reduction plans that identify various sources. So it's very responsive to the communities.
I don't want to belabor this, but that's not what I was talking about.
But on the flaring education, I'm just trying to say that we do reach out. Have we done a specific community town hall meeting on flaring?
Try this one on.
Okay.
If you ask any of the board members if they've had a community member come up and tell them, I feel much better about flaring now that I've heard from the district, how many do you think would answer yes to that? Huh?
Judy says she has. I am.
Okay. So,
So
one,
I have.
one. We got one here. And
I
you
have-
know she's goody two-shoes. So you know she was out there helping those people.
But I have, because I have in my community a landfill that has, for years, methane collected at that landfill. And it was originally converted to electricity, but as the methane supply diminished,
Right.
we had to add natural gas to it in order to keep producing electricity. And then we got even further diminishment so that we could no longer do any electricity, and then the result was flaring, and I'm looking at David because he knows about this, David Rothbard, because it was LA Sanitation District landfill. And we did have some very interested community members, Joan Davidson being one of them. I know that Dr. Liu knows her, who was constantly monitoring that. And right after I became a member of this board, we had a community meeting where that whole issue was brought up, and we talked about, what are we going to do about this flaring, and are there other alternatives? So, but that was, well, I came on this board in 2010, so that was many years ago. But you might see that happening in communities where there are landfills and flaring is happening.
See, if you drive by a refinery on the freeway and they're flaring, people in the car say, "Oh my God, what's going on there?" I'm sure that the people that Mayor Mitchell's talking to are active and do understand. But I'm talking about the public as a whole. That's something frightening. So I just think that there's something missing here in the education of the public. Dr. Parker?
After when I first started working, the oil business was going to the refineries. I first had the perception that flaring itself was totally a bad thing. In essence, it is a bad thing because it's a preventive of something worse. The badness itself of it is, if you don't flare, you're now spewing total organic pollutants into the air that can be more harmful if they are flared, if they are not flared. So flaring, in one regard, and please, those that are in the Sierra Club don't jump up and yell at me for saying this, is a good thing. It's good because it lessens the pollutants that are going to go into the air. Now, it's bad because it has to happen. So when people go down on the freeways, especially down the 405, and seeing big flares coming out, you're saying something went wrong inside that refinery that now is causing them to have to burn off all of these bad things that are going to be going into the air if we don't stop them. So in one regard, it's a situation to say, let's not put all of that in, and if we don't put it in, it's going to blow up. It's that we're talking about gases itself that has an expansion rate itself of thousands of times more deadly than what it would be if it's not. So I think that if we would really kind of educate the public on being able to say, yeah, it's a preventive way of trying to cut down on some of the more organic pollutions that are going to go into the air. I remember on the 405, right in near Bel Air, you would go by and you'd see all of this methane flaring itself from that. The reason for that is that they built all those houses on top of the hill up there, which used to be a dump.
Right.
And all of this trash over the years had basically metastasized into the earth, and now this methane gas wants to come out. If we hadn't done something about it, the whole area itself would be being polluted with this methane gas, which was a lot more deadly than the residuals itself of the flaring. Certainly we get some bad stuff off of flaring, but hopefully not as bad as it would be if we didn't do it. So I just wanted to add that.
I think what he said exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
You need to let people know what it's doing,
Your point is well taken, and in fact, we will be bringing to the board shortly the development of an educational program, an education outreach that talks about air quality. And I think this is a good opportunity to discuss the impact of flaring and how it can affect air quality and what we're trying to do. I know that our team has gone out You know, we're talking about non-refinery flaring operations, but we've also gone out and done a number of education. I don't know, Mike, if you and or Dr. Fine would like to add to that.
Well, I just wanted to mention that a lot of the big incidents, I think, that we're thinking of with the large flare as you're driving down the freeway are from refineries, which aren't subject to this rule, but are subject to our other rule, 1118. And as that rule was amended in 2017 by the board, there were two major commitments. One was to bring that rule back in a period of time to see how we can minimize the flaring. And number two is to really enhance our existing flare notification system with more of the type of educational material and background to be much more informative to the public and do better outreach with that new system.
That's what I'm looking for, Dr. Fine. That's exactly. Dr. Liu?
Oh, I'd like to agree with Dr. Parker and say that this role of being a regulator can get kind of tricky sometimes because when it comes to flares, it's a complicated issue. On the one hand, we want to reduce and eliminate flares if at all possible. On the other hand, they're necessary for safety reasons, and we're certainly better at flaring than not flaring if they're going to just release the gases into the air. So we're stuck having to balance that, and I think it would be really helpful to develop educational tools for people to understand the complexity of the flaring issue. I do also want to point out, however, that we really have to try to push to reduce and minimize and eliminate flares whenever possible. And I don't know if we have on staff anymore. I mean, West has people who were involved in the original 1118 rule development, Lockie. So maybe you recount for us what happened when we first proposed a refinery flare rule, and the refinery said, no, we don't need a rule, we will do it. Give us a chance. And it was a year, right? We gave them a year. They reduced their flaring by, I believe it was 30% or more, right? Or
I'll be happy to provide you with all, excuse me, with all the stats. 2 lives back, I was heavily involved with the rulemaking, and actually we have a very good story to tell, and Dr. Beck is probably right on the money. Perhaps we are not advertising enough. So through the successive rulemakings with the refinery flares, we managed to eliminate routine flaring completely. We cannot eliminate flaring altogether because there are safety devices, as Dr. Parker was mentioning, and we need to allow them to operate. But we managed to reduce flaring by more than 95% compared to what our baseline was. Yeah. So there is a good story to tell, and perhaps our education program should dwell on that. They need to continue operating. There are safety devices. But anyhow,
when challenged and pushed, there's ways to do this. And that's also, I mean, an issue that came up for me as the rule was being developed, and I looked at the board package and I asked staff about this because in the resolution, we're proposing to do a technology assessment for oil and gas facilities.
Right.
And I asked about whether we should be doing it for all the facilities because, in all honesty, all the non-refinery facilities, because in all honesty, I mean, why not do the technology assessment on everything to see if there are other opportunities that we should flesh out a little bit more? And anyway, that was my comment. I know we're going to take public comment, so I just wanted to agree with Dr. Parker that this is a tricky situation.
We have public comment that has been mentioned. I'd like to call John McNamara to the vacant microphone and David Rothbart to the other microphone.
Good morning, Dr. Burke and board members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Vice President with CR&R. We developed a food waste digester and green waste digester in Riverside in the last few years, and we're really proud that we've been operating for a couple of years with support from AQMD, financial grants that were provided to us. And we just wanted to comment on some of the staff comments on ammonia and how that interacts with our digester and the backup flare that we have. We're really proud of our project because it's the most advanced in California at this point. It's the only digester that's operating at the level of 300 tons per day, and we capture the gas, we clean it, and then we make a biogas renewable fuel out of it, and that renewable natural gas is put into our solid waste collection vehicles. So instead of using diesel, we're using our own produced biogas. And our goal is to make enough gas to fuel our entire fleet, over 300 trucks with our own gas. It's a very environmentally successful project. And In May of 2018, we connected to the natural gas pipeline. So that is a huge accomplishment because it is the only project in California that has ever done that. We're the first one. It's a historic event. And in terms of the staff's comments on ammonia, we'd definitely like to talk to your staff about it. We have lots of experience with the chemistry involved. Not sure we agree that the ammonia is going to be translated into increased NOx emissions. So just wanted to tell you about the status of our project. We're really proud of it. And I can't overemphasize that. We're really proud that SCAQMD has partnered with us, provided us funding, and that we connected to the gas line. We're the first ever in the state of California. Thank you for the time for comments.
Would Chris Hall come to the vacant microphone?
Good morning, Chairman Burke and board members. I'm David Rothbard. I work for the Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts, excuse me, and also represent the Southern California Alliance of Publicly Owned Treatment Works. First, I'd like to thank staff for working with us on this rule. We really appreciate the coordination on this complicated rule, and we're very happy with the outcome. Do look forward to working with staff on looking at backed limits, especially for as food waste starts coming into wastewater treatment plants, and to make sure that harmonizes with 1383 and that there isn't any problem with the technology as we start transitioning food waste away from landfills. While I'm up here and advocating for my folks, I did want to bring up that the purpose of the rule is to provide beneficial use, to have some way of rewarding this type of beneficial use. All of my members first take any waste gas as a consequence of digestion of waste, take this gas and beneficially reuse it. Use engines, turbines, fuel cells, whatever we can, put it in the pipeline, but sometimes it's not very cost effective. It's hard to treat this gas. There's additional treatment necessary, and to the extent that the board could support legislation or activities of the CPUC, we greatly appreciate trying to move towards more beneficial reuse. That's always our first choice. Flaring is always our last choice. We have to manage this gas and always manage it. We can't vent it to the atmosphere. But to the extent you could help us, we'd greatly appreciate it. And Dr. Burke, I just wanted to also add that as far as non-refineries, wastewater treatment plants and landfills, the vast majority, if not all flares, are enclosed flares. So if you drive by one of our facilities, you're not going to see a flame because there's a shroud around the flare. So we're very sensitive to public perception. We're not going to have something that's going to be a public eyesore. And as far as the emissions of these flares, they are very clean. Years ago with Rule 1110.2, where we had to look at engines and retrofitting them, a consequence of shutting down engines was to flare. And if you actually look at the emissions, engines versus flares, the flares were actually cleaner. So maybe that addresses some of the concerns you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Ivan Tether, come to the microphone. Michael.
Good morning. My name is Chris Hall. I'm the president of Drilling Production Company, a third-generation oil and gas producer in California. And what I want you to know is that the industry has been working on trying to find beneficial uses of stranded oil field waste gas for over 20 years. What we do know from what we've done is that we're limited to generation of power on site with most of the stranded gas. The Public Utility Commission regulations prohibit exporting power in quantities less than 1 megawatt. The solution we found is to change the PUC regulations to allow export of power generated from stranded gas. Now, the California Independent Petroleum Association that you discussed earlier has worked for 20 years and has worked on 5 legislative bills to attempt to do that with no success. Now, even a grammar school kid can recognize, as we've discussed, that flaring is a waste of a resource. And I did that in a school paper I've got here for you. My mother gave this to me. This was in 1959. In 1997, we discussed distributed generation as a solution to stranded gas with the California Energy Commission. And in 2000, the association began working on distributed generation as an alternative to flaring. I participated in the off-gas demonstration project in conjunction with the California Producers Electric Co-op, the Energy Commission, the IOGCC, the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission, and the U.S. Department of Energy. We ran a microturbine generator for 5 years, starting in 2006. And as part of the AB 32 scoping plan, and at the recommendation of the PUC, we conducted an emission test with CARB for both flare and microturbines to determine the benefits of generating power. I think these are the only actual tests done side by side with flares and turbines. The test showed the flares were cleaner than was expected, and the microturbines were very clean. Analysis demonstrated that use of microturbines would result in both reduction of criteria pollutants as well as greenhouse gases. However, CARB's draft white paper, when issued, concluded there was only sufficient gas to generate between 14 to 28 megawatts of power, contrary to what the data supported. CARB staff claimed we're not in the business of picking and choosing winners or losers. And Senator Calderon, who had authored Senate Bill 682 for distributed generation, said, "You've experienced where good science has been trumped by the politics of the environmental movement that will oppose any hydrocarbon power source regardless of its benefit." And that's where we are today. What we need and what we are asking for is a collaborative effort of which you could be a part to work with the legislature and the many agencies, the Energy Commission, DOGGR, PUC, EPA, CARB, to change the PUC regulations to allow the export of power to recognize waste gas as being comparable to maybe a renewable fuel source or equivalent to a solar generation capacity on someone's roof. If any questions, be willing to answer them.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Michael Salmon, come to the vacant microphone.
I'm Michael Salmon. I'm a professor of history at UCLA, where for the past 5 years I've worked on history and public policy of the oil industry and its regulation in Southern California. In 2015, I advised the World Bank on approaching Governor Brown, which resulted in December 2015, Governor Brown signing on to the World Bank's Zero Routine Flaring by 2030 initiative to end routine flaring at oil well sites. And then in December 2016, I was the principal organizer of the workshop on beneficial use technologies held at the University of Southern California's Local Hydrocarbon Institute, which was co-sponsored by the World Bank. I'm here today to support the resolution to enact this rule because of the inclusion of the technology assessment for beneficial use technologies at oil and gas well sites, and the expectation that when that assessment is reported back to the Stationary Source Committee in 24 months, that staff will, in good faith and with due seriousness, consider whether any modifications are warranted to this rule as a result of the technology assessment. The rule as presented to you today really does not do anything to limit or reduce routine flaring at well sites in the district. And in fact, the carve-out for facilities that emit less than 4 tons per year of NOx allows those facilities to engage in a massive increase of flaring. At oil and gas well sites in the district, flaring is far and away the main and major source of NOx emissions. If any of those sites that emit less than 4 tons of NOx per year are indeed small or remote, they emit very little NOx. There are few appliances at oil and gas sites that emit NOx. There's flares, there's microturbines if they have them, and then some sites have amine plants with boilers and glycol boilers to remove carbon dioxide and water from the gas, but they only have those appliances if they have a connection to sell gas through the gas distribution pipeline of SoCalGas. The technology assessment will provide an opportunity to look at a range of technologies that are for sale on the market in use at oil sites all over the world. including the production of CNG, the production of electricity through fuel cells and microturbines and gas engine generators, and also new mini and micro gas to liquid platforms that can work with as little as 50 MCF of gas per day and turn out zero sulfur synthetic diesel that is high value and much cleaner as a fuel source. These technologies can also produce hydrogen. So to go and address some of Chairman Burke's comments, one of the issues with flaring, in particular with flaring at oil and gas well sites, which produce high quality gas in this district, is the greenhouse gas emissions from flaring. And to assess those greenhouse gas emissions, one has to do a life cycle analysis of carbon emissions, not just at the site, but carbon emissions from other fuels and power production that could have been covered by the gas. Thank you. I appreciate your generosity.
Ivan Tether and Bill Lamar. Come to the vacant microphone.
Good morning, Chairman Burke and members of the governing board, and thank you for your passion for the environment. I'm Ivan Tether of Tether Law, and I'm speaking for the California Independent Petroleum Association. We appreciate the work that staff has done. The proposed rule is very demanding, but as currently drafted, it is viable. Maybe just barely viable, but viable. Oil field flares are essential for safety as well as oil production. Whenever oil is produced, gas is also produced. Restricting flare operation can curtail well-paying jobs in the industry, increase emissions, and result in more oil from the Middle East. The proposed rule will severely curtail operation of oil field flares. This is unusual in district rulemaking. We find no authority for the district to curtail stationary sources by rule. We recommend that any operational curtailment be limited to case-by-case permitting or notice and comment adjudication by the hearing board. Further, CEQA analysis also covers the issue. The oil and gas industry represents only 17% of the rule's total flare emissions, and our industry has the most beneficial use already in place. Yet the rule will impose the most stringent requirements on our industry. But SIPA members don't want to burn potentially valuable product in flares. Yet some have no alternative. Otherwise, we like beneficial use. We will not needlessly increase flaring. Mr. Hall spoke about our requests for your assistance with CARB and the PUC in gaining access to the electricity grid. This is important to us, especially for small oil fields, and we have a letter on the record in your board packet. Non-combustion technologies such as fuel cells are interesting, but they have not been demonstrated to function using produced gas. They are no basis for regulatory action. CARB's latest carbon intensity figures make LA area production look very good for the planet in comparison to Saudi Arabian crude. Local production ranges from a bit lower CI than Saudi Arabian to over 5 times lower CI. While we have a hard time supporting a rule that curtails operation of fully compliant state-of-the-art equipment, we will nonetheless strive to comply with the rule as it is currently drafted. And we look forward to working with the district to obtain better access to the electricity grid, to increase beneficial use, and to reduce carbon emissions. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Lamar, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, Dr. Burke and board members. I'm Bill Lamar. I'm the Executive Director of the California Small Business Alliance. I'm speaking in support of our member, the California Independent Petroleum Association, and their lingering concerns about this proposed rule. We were very encouraged at the support given by the Stationary Source Committee members at their December 19th meeting that this be a balanced rule and one that does not destroy the smaller emitters or small businesses once it is implemented. Not only SIPA, but all our member businesses have similar expectations when rules are approved, but oftentimes we're disappointed when recommendations, commitments, and instructions are expressed during discussions between the board, staff, and the business community, but not memorialized in the eventual rule. It seems that once a rule is approved, it's on to yet another rule, and the promises of the past are left unaddressed because it's no longer an urgent matter. We were also encouraged at staff's agreeing to follow the Stationary Source Committee members' direction to perform a technology assessment to explore more beneficial uses of gas for oil and gas production sites and to report back to the committee in 2 years on the results of the need for any potential rule changes. At the last Stationary Source Committee meeting, the SIPA representative asked this agency's support in advocating to the Public Utilities Commission to develop programs and policies that would require electric utilities to make beneficial use of excess gas that these oil field operators now find it necessary to flare and turn into electricity using micro or large turbines. While there were no objections, the discussion didn't find its way into the final rule. If this agency would take the advantage of using their advocacy position, it would move beyond the routine of simple rule development, implementation, and enforcement, and demonstrate that it is genuinely committed to producing balanced rules which address both the needs of the environment and the business community, especially small businesses and the jobs they provide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Etter, does he get another 3 minutes?
Yes, sir, he does.
Okay, great. Harvey? And would Chris Flagg from the city of Los Angeles come to the other microphone? Mr. Etter?
Hello again. I'm Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition. And 90% or more of the population want to see solar conversion ASAP if they know what's going on. Heater treaters, flares, all this. We got to phase out fossil fuels. We got to do it now. We got to have a plan, to shut down these facilities. That investment is being taken out of them, and it's going into solar renewables. It has to be done equitably and as quickly as possible. There's a problem here that might be setting up. There's a low carbon fuel standard, supposed to be 10% reduced by 2020, and they use this so-called renewable natural gas. For instance, Santa Monica has 200 buses. They get a landfill in Texas. They put it in the gas distribution system, interstate, and they send it to Santa Monica, and it's used there. Now, they get credit for outrageous amounts of tons reduced, that like $100 or more a ton versus 10, 20, which is on the market. There's two markets. And anyway, this is a big problem. In the oil and gas, Alaska, I lived in Alaska. I worked up there building infrastructure. I got hurt on the pipeline, and I'm still litigating it. I won a Supreme Court case a couple years ago. I'm dealing with them again. They've got a 25% of everything. It was an eighth. Goes to the state. We could do the same thing here, and especially towards low-income solar equity, the program that we worked on with the PUC. Now, district heating and cooling and reclaim. We had concentrating solar power and thermal energy storage, and this was about the Israeli power plants that were 354 megawatts, within 100 miles of the district, been operating 20, 30 years. This is the only plants that have been operating that was solar. Anyway, but this is also, talked to the head of the Strategic Growth Council and Ken Alex, who went to school at UC Santa Cruz in the early 70s in the environmental program, about district heating and cooling, especially cooling. The new reports say we're going to see heat waves 55 degrees C. That's over 130 degrees. We've got to get ready for this. We've got to plan for it and integrate these systems and phase out the stuff that's killing us and that we're destroying the planet with. And we've known about this for 100 years. It goes back to the guy that ran The guy that had the second Nobel in chemistry ran Nobel for 20, 30 years, and they saw in 1880s to the early, with cars and burning fossil fuels that it was increasing, and they knew about this, and that's no news.
You know, Mr. Eder, I'd also be interested sometime when you have a minute to give me, because we won't take everybody's time, but before the reciprocating engine came into popularity in the United States and in the world, the methane gas that was being created by horses, which was the main mode of transportation, was enormous. I understand there was 136 tons a day of
manure,
horse manure taken out of the city of New York alone.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not about oil or gas or alone, because this is a continuing saga that we're dealing with here, and it seems like whatever is the mode of transportation at the moment is the killer of the moment. So, you know, when they talk about electricity, unless they go to solar, I don't see any other answer.
We've got the state law now that says by 2045.
Just a thought. Just
20,
a thought.
or is it 2040?
Yes, sir.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to Mr. Flagg.
My name is Chris Flagg. I'm an engineer at the City of Los Angeles Bureau of
Can I
Sanitation.
ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
When you come, no, this one's, when you come to testify, you're representing the City of Los Angeles, right?
At this time, yes, sir.
So who authorizes you to do that? Is that the city council or the mayor or department head? Who is that?
Usually my supervisors
Your supervisor.
within our
Who would
Division
be-
of Regulatory Affairs.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
I just wondered.
Yes. And you'll like my comments today. You will be thanking
Starting
my
back in 3
supervisors.
minutes.
Setting a high bar.
Yeah, right.
The reason why is this rule, as presented to you today, is a pretty tough rule. We've gone through a lot of tough discussions with staff, a lot of pull and tug between staff and regulated community, and sometimes we feel we're winning something, sometimes we feel we're not. But in the end, we are environmentalists, particularly staff at the city. We feel environmentally conscientious about everything. We have to look after the city, but at the Bureau of Sanitation, we want to be a leader in dealing with the environment and improving our stance with the community in regards to how we handle the environment. And so when we come to deal with our various issues, including this rule, we like to be sure staff understands this, the rest of the regulatory community understands this, and we present our arguments in that way. And so we're very happy that we've been able to work out a rule that is, at this stage of the saga, as you phrase it, something that we can live with. And we applaud the work of the staff, the efforts of the regulated community, and of course, board members for listening to our pleas for your help. So the saga does continue. As you can see, there are efforts that continue because we have found, well, we're coming back in 12 months with one effort and 24 months with another effort because the saga must continue. It's no longer manure, it's no longer reciprocating engines. We've moved on from there. And the City of Los Angeles is very proud to be moving on as much as we can in producing electricity at the Hyperion Treatment Plant and other locations, and in finding ways we can improve how we stand by installing measures of beneficial uses wherever practicable. And we thank the board, for making all this possible.
Before you go,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank you for coming today, because not only yourself, but the County of Los Angeles has been represented by the Department of Sanitation in the past. But, you know, a couple years ago, the city of Los Angeles, from my understanding, hired a czar of oil for the city. Are you familiar with that?
Although I have worked in the oil fields,
And
I have no knowledge of that.
He is in charge of the city's relationship with current and future oil drilling. And what bothers me is we have never seen one time from the largest city in the South Coast District a representative from his office here, to my knowledge. Have you met with him? They've never come to testify.
He does come
Okay.
to our working groups, though.
What?
He comes to our working groups.
Okay. Doesn't it seem strange that they never come to testify? They have more oil wells in Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, than the rest of the district combined. But they've never been here to testify.
I will take that back to my superiors.
No, tell him that I'm thankful that he let you come today and asked you to testify, okay? Because we appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and thank you, sir.
Thank you. That concludes our testimony on this item. Mayor Benoit?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to just commend staff. We took this item before Stationary Source many months ago, and we brought it back a couple times, and we worked on it to make sure we brought forward an item that I hope that my board colleagues would be appreciative of, and know that we've taken a lot of time on both sides to try and make this a workable rule for the benefit of for both. You know, when I look at just like you said, flares do have an interesting reaction. I've had that reaction myself when driving down the freeway and seeing a flare at an oil well site, or a flare at a local landfill, just like Judith has. I have one in my area. And so, yes, it's something you do wonder, why is that not being used in some other way? But what we found with this rule in so many places, especially the gentleman testified from CRNR, is most of these flares that we're talking about in this rule are there as an extreme backup, the last resort, and something that in a lot of these rules, or a lot of these, when this rule first came forward, we were going to make some of those places update their flare that they almost never use and hope to never use. So we've made some exceptions in this rule to make sure that they can put that money towards generation, towards putting that into the pipeline, if it could be, and other avenues, and then furthering that with the tech assessment. So I feel very strongly with the tech assessment, we'll come back in the future and modify this even further. And it's something that's important to do. And that technology, I think, is maturing very quickly. And it's almost too bad we can't get more of that out there. And I think that's the biggest thing I want to make sure as we look at these rules for flares, that we're pushing for that other technology, that other use, besides just, you know, investing another $1 million in a new flare that hopefully never gets used. What we did learn too about some of the newer flares that we were pushing towards, and some of the aspects that didn't work as well in the environments that we currently have, especially the wastewater treatment plants, or again at CRNR. So again, I want to just commend staff, all the hard work we did to get to this point. Thank my colleagues on Stationary Source that put up with hearing this more than a couple times. And I'd like to make a motion to move this item forward.
We have a motion. If we get a second, then Dr. Lou would just. Do you have a second?
Well, my only thing, and I'd be happy to second, but I would hope that.
You can't speak to it.
That's right,
If
so I
you're
can't
not gonna
speak to it,
second.
but I want to speak to something else, so why don't we wait till we get a second?
Can we get a second? Okay.
Great.
Now,
Now, I think I would just ask whether the maker of the motion would agree to one minor change, and that would be that the tech assessment be broader than just oil and gas facilities, and include all non-refinery flare facilities.
I'm fine with that.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'd also like to request of staff a briefing of some sort, just an update or an explanation of the issues that were raised by SIPA and others about their limitations on selling electricity and all of that. I'd like to understand that a lot better. And I know there was a request of us to support, going to the PUC and the CEC. I just don't feel like I understand that issue as well as I should. If staff could brief me on that, I would appreciate it.
Or maybe could that be part of the tech assessment when we're looking at that, or will they be part of the tech assessment?
I don't think it's a technology thing, it's more of a policy thing. So whatever staff is most comfortable with.
Perhaps we could do something at the Stationary Source Committee meeting where we could discuss that. Because it's advocacy, it's also perhaps more appropriate at legislative as well. Or we could do a combined special committee. Let us think about it and we'll come back to you on that.
Okay, yeah, maybe come back to stationary first, and then if we feel it's something we want to advocate for from stationary, then we bring in legislative and then have that jointly. Let's maybe talk about it stationary first. Okay.
All right, any other comments? We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk open the roll? Close the roll. The rule passes 9-0. That concludes our public hearing items. We will now go.
Number 24.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot number 24. We get the staff presentation on 24.
Dr. Burke, this is a pro forma review. Staff's willing to waive presentation.
If we don't have any public comments, I'll move the
Yeah.
item.
I'll second.
We have public
Oh,
comment.
okay,
so-
then I'll wait till we hear from public comment.
Okay, Mr. Etter?
Hello there again. I'm Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition. I don't think this should be exempt from CEQA. And included in that needs to be done the life cycle cost effectiveness of solar, which is cost effective and has been. DOE's Sunshot program says that they hit 6 cents a kilowatt hour for power plants. They were supposed to hit without tax credits or anything by 2020, hit it in 2017. This stuff's cost effective, et cetera, and needs to be used. And the body count from PM, say 7,500 for the state, 4,400 for the district. It's like pulling teeth to try to get these numbers out from CARB or from you folks. But anyway, they've been around a long time. And they say that each is $9 million per, so that's hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars. And these costs have to be traced back to the health, what's spent on health in the state, what money comes from the state and public money, and other costs to society, and quantified and put into all these 617, et cetera. I've said this at other meetings and whatnot. And that these externalities have to be internalized and quantified now and put into this decision-making process. But without this stuff is cost-effective now, and it's getting more so all the time. Again, the state has not looked at solar thermal the way it has, and the storage, which is much less than battery storage, a tenth, something like that. So there's big problems there. Everything has to be looked with our solar thinking caps on of how to do this. Like I heard existing vehicles. I heard Musk said, well, we can't retrofit them to battery electric. Why not? What is it? We got to look at these things. We've got to think differently about everything we've been doing. And we've got to try to make the change and do it equitably and justly like this, in terms of the energy system, this is the most significant, potentially, change in energy system since the abolition of slavery in the Civil War. But if we don't do it right, it's going to be on the same thing, the 1%. The article in the Journal yesterday said 20% of the population owns 90% of the wealth, 10% of the population, 80% of the population owns only 10%. It's not right.
Thank you for your testimony.
Bill,
That concludes the testimony. I'm recognizing
Thank you.
Dr. Liu.
I just want to clarify with staff that what we're taking up here is that we're expanding the definition of precursors to PM 2.5 to include ammonia and VOCs. That's what the proposal is? Okay.
Yes, but it's no actual change because the rule already includes them. It's just we missed it in one part of the rule and EPA wants us to fix it.
Great. I will move the item.
Was that a motion?
Yes.
Second? Would the clerk open the roll? Close the roll. Passes 9-0. Okay. That concludes our regular agenda. We will now move to public comment. We have Mr. Stephen Goldsmith who will speak first, then Al Sadler second, then Marilyn Kamumar. Can we have those people come to the vacant microphones?
Yeah. Good morning and Happy New Year, and thank you for your time and service to the community. My name is Steve Goldsmith, and I'm from the Torrance Refinery Action Alliance, and wanted to speak on something that probably is coming on to a future agenda, perhaps next month, rather. And I wanted to urge all in this coming month, it's a complex issue, and for those who have not delved into this, I know a number of you have from the refinery subcommittee, but for others, urge you to look at the hydrofluoric acid, and the need to phase it out is a deadly chemical with low chance of getting out, but high consequences for the entire economy and the lives of our communities. And we're available if you would like to meet one-on-one. Even if you have met with us before, we would very much like to give you some updates and some additional information that we've discovered about off-site release that did occur, apparently, and some other areas of that might be useful to explore and see if we can resolve this issue quickly as possible. We, of course, support a phase-out in 4 years or as soon as possible. Thank you.
Let me assure you that I don't know a single board member who is not focused on this issue, who has not had discussions or briefings, numerous on this issue. So, as you say, it is a very difficult, very complex issue. But this board is really putting in the time and effort to try and find the appropriate answer.
And we appreciate that, and it is very true that people have gone out of their way to meet with us, and we appreciate that.
Mr. Sattler, good to see you again.
Good morning. Good to see you again, Dr. Burke. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to the board and staff for all your work in trying to have cleaner air for us all to breathe. And I'm sure you understand when members of the public will continue pushing you to have it be cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And of course, the issue of HF is one of the issues that, of course, many people are working on. I wanted to thank you in particular for your memory of David Zemansky. I knew him for over 30 years. I remember back when he led a hike in Griffith Park to try to stop the installation of the Toyon 2 landfill, which would have been in Griffith Park. So, you know, he's been around doing environmental good works for a long time. I also wanted to speak just briefly to item number 2. I didn't want to get up and speak about it at the time, but I just wanted to say it's rather refreshing to hear the owner of an emission source stand up and say that his facility is emitting 10% of the NOx in the basin. I see that he was requesting funding to help reduce that NOx, and for all I know, maybe he's already required to reduce that NOx and is just seeking funding to offset his expenditure. But nonetheless, I found it rather refreshing to hear somebody stand up and say, we're doing 10%, and we need to we know we need to reduce it. And of course, you know, we do need to get off of fossil fuels ASAP, as has been stated more than once already today. And but I think nonetheless that his candor is refreshing.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Marilyn, I'm sorry that I butchered your last name.
That's okay. Often, Kami means God's village. So I just want to say Kami means God. So anyway, I'm here, the reason for it is Stop the Comecco Battery Recycling and Company Expansion Project. Dear Dr. William A. Burke, Chairman and members of the Governing Board, my name is Marilyn Kamimura, a 47-year resident of North Whittier, which is part of Avocado Heights. I am also a member of Clean Air Coalition of North Whittier and Avocado Heights. I am speaking as a parent and a grandparent for multiple generations of families with children that want a healthy environment to live and raise children in. In 2016, SCAQMD released a health risk assessment that disclosed that the arsenic plume from Comecco through modeling traveled 2 miles and would increase the cancer burden for 12,000 households. That arsenic plume comes where my family lives. Then in July 2016, from soil sampling done by USC Medical School of Quebec, it disclosed my property lead level from 71 to 244 ppms. There are also other constituents of concern. I babysit my grandchildren, 3 and 5 years old. They are little boys who love to play outdoors, knowing that there is no safe level of lead in the system and that they are now being exposed to high levels of lead. I have replaced my patio and patio cover, minimize soil exposure by replacing with pavers, have a covered sandbox, wash their hands often, and am constantly washing down where they play. We are now living in fear like the families around the now closed Exide battery recycling. A lawsuit was filed by California Department of Toxic Substance Control on October 31st, 2018 against Comecco and Company for 29 violations of the California Hazardous Waste Control Law as part of the Health and Safety Code. The document reads, Comecco knew in 2013, they knew their violations. They are showing us the bad company they are. The County of Los Angeles, Office of the County Council, Supervisor Janice Hahn, Supervisor Hilda Solis, and Assembly Member Ian Calderon have come forward with written statements against the expansion of Comecco and Company. We ask the same of you. Stop the harm. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and
Excuse me?
you'll be happy to hear that I've been asking some of the same questions that you have about Comecco, as well as some of my colleagues.
Why has it even gone forward through SCAQMD? Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. Rebecca Velasquez.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Burke, board members, and staff. I'm here from the Clean Air Coalition of North Whittier and Avocado Heights. See our logo. I want to read into the record the statements by our political representatives opposing the Comecco facility proposed expansion, which your staff is currently reviewing and will come before you for a decision. First, I want to read from your new board member, Janice Hahn. I'll read quickly. Quemeco's operations have troubled local residents in Hacienda Heights for years. Since Quemeco proposed expanding their operations, I have written multiple times to both the DTSC and AQMD and would like to reiterate my request that Quemeco's proposed expansion be denied. Quemeco has repeatedly violated state laws in handling toxic substances, including lead, arsenic, and butadiene, a known carcinogen, endangering their workers and residents of neighboring communities. These violations not only make it clear that Quemeco should not be permitted to expand, but call into question whether Quemeco should even be allowed to continue operating while these violations persist. The results of the testing done by DTSC in 2016 have been delayed for too long. The families I represent, whose kids play in yards and on playgrounds near this plant, need answers. I also wrote a letter to encourage DTSC to expand the soil testing perimeter, and I appreciate DTSC's recent announcement to do so. This new expanded testing should include local schools so we can ensure the health and safety of our children. I urge DTSC to avoid any further delays and publish the results of any and all testing as soon as it is available. We have formed a task force comprised of County Council, LA County Fire, the Department of Public Health, and other agencies to closely follow the Quemeco issue. We as a county believe that a facility that has repeatedly violated state health and safety laws should not be allowed to expand, and we will work to continue they are not permitted to. Supervisor Hilda Solis also made a statement. Quote, Quemeco has repeatedly violated state law in handling toxic substances, endangering the health, safety, and well-being of their workers and those who live in our neighboring communities. I support all efforts to force Quemeco to disclose their operation to the public as soon as possible and immediately clean up all contamination it has caused. No expansion of their operation should be considered until these serious violations of state law and public trust are remedied. Quemeco has proved itself to be a bad actor and an employer with a record of putting the safety of its employees and the community at risk. From Ian Calderon's office, dear Mr. Nastri, I am writing to you in regards to Quemeco's capacity upgrade project request and the potential impact this may have on my constituents and the environment. As a representative of the San Gabriel Valley, the health and quality of life of my constituents is a top priority. It has come to my attention that DTSC has filed a civil complaint against Quemeco. I respectfully request that you refrain from considering a capacity upgrade for their facility, as it is imperative the alleged violations in the lawsuit are first addressed. We must be certain our residents' health and safety are guaranteed and our environment is not negatively impacted. Also, Representative Grace Napolitano's office has come out very strongly against this proposed expansion. Thank you very much.
For your testimony today. Ms. Valdemar at one microphone, and Jason Martinez at this microphone over here.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's 2019, and we are here again. We've been bringing youth for years from Chica in San Bernardino, which is the Chicano Indigenous Community for Culturally Conscious Advocacy and Action. We've been listening very closely to the public comment today, both on the agenda items and right now. And we're hearing a couple things being said. Talk about reactions by the public and listening to community members, the comment about viable rules. And we're hoping that you're gonna listen to the public comment about viable communities with equal attention. The discussion about psychological reactions, to some of the items that are being discussed is from real trauma. And it's the trauma of pollution, of chronic illness, of poor air quality, and it's real. It's real trauma that our communities are experiencing, especially my community in San Bernardino. Wouldn't it be great if our community members could be sent here, to get time off of work? I work in a library, and I'm taking time off work to be here today because it's so important to me to make sure that you know how our community feels about this, and we know we're underrepresented. On the drive here, we witnessed a lot of trucks spewing clouds, billowing clouds from our diesel trucks that are on the freeway on the right here. And we can't help but see the conflict between how things are enforced for industry and how things are enforced at home for our residents. For example, in my neighborhood, if I drive down the street without current tags, if I don't have a current smog check, I'm pulled over immediately. And in my neighborhood, members of my community are put at real risk every time this happens, even if they're in abject poverty. The enforcement of these rules is rigorous. Yet industry, with ample resources, does not experience the same rigor. There is no threat to them for the continuous building of warehouses and thousands of trucks that come along with them. Fossil fuels, including petroleum and natural gas, need to be as afraid to pollute as our average resident is afraid to get pulled over without tags. Right now, that doesn't exist. We need stronger policies and rules, and we need better enforcement of these rules. I live in Colton, I work in San Bernardino. I'm surrounded by freeways, literally in a box of freeways. I'm doing my part to be here, to bring other voices here from my community, and I'm asking you to do your part. And this year, I hope you can rigorously support zero emissions and rules and policies that rigorously enforce what we need to have clean air. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Would Jason Martinez and Jonas Fernandez come to the vacant microphones?
Macuali Tonali, no toca Jason Martinez. Buenos días, mi nombre es Jason Martinez. Good morning, my name is Jason Martinez. I said that in 3 different languages, English, Spanish, and Nahuatl. As indigenous people here on this continent, I'm here representing Chica and the community member from the Inland Empire. I'm here because I believe our communities in Southern California need to have access to zero emissions and electric transportation technology. So I asked the AQMD board to create a strong indirect rule. I've been gone for about 2 to 3 years, so some of y'all probably remember my face, some of y'all probably don't.
I do.
Glad. But the thing is that for about 2 to 3 years, I've been away. I went to school in Humboldt State University, working on my degree, and it's why I've been gone. But the biggest joke I used to just say when I was up there is like, man, it feels so great out here, but you know what's missing? I just miss the smell of car smog and bad air quality in the morning. The reality is the air was nice and pristine, and to come back down here, back to this crap, that's a problem. And I didn't, and I have love for my community. I have love for the IE and SoCal. This is my home. This is where I was raised at. But at the end of the day, to come back home to nothing but smog, it's ridiculous. And, I came down here because I had to go to work. I'm the son of a trucker, and I am a student and a warehouse worker. And that's just the way it is. That's our reality out in the IE. We have nothing but warehouses as jobs. We don't complain. We struggle. We live to survive. It's the norm. Go to an agency, get a temp job, get hired at a warehouse, make minimum wage, and kill ourselves for nickels and dimes just to barely make ends meet. And in the first month as I'm back, I'm over here struggling to breathe either inside or outside in the warehouse while I'm out here trying to unload 40 to 80 pound boxes out of a 130-degree truck in the middle of summer. And I'm still doing that to these very days. I'm not complaining. I need the money. But when people talk about, industry talks about, bringing in jobs for a community, it's these jobs that are killing our community. 15 people per day, times that by 365 days a year, and you have about 5,475 deaths that are due to bad air quality. And when is that gonna stop? So I urge the board that it's time to make a change. Screw this new year, new me stuff. It's new year, new us, and it's time for us to change as a community the way we look at air quality. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Jonas Fernandez and Deanna Contreras.
All right, hello, good morning. Yep, this is Jonas Fernandez. I'm here with Sierra Club, and I want our communities in the Inland Empire and San Bernardino to have access to clean air and electronic transportation in the near future. I believe that with a strong indirect source rule, the Inland Valley will have cleaner air than 5 to 10 years ago when there was less industrialization in these areas. Well, personally, I happened to talk to a visitor from Germany that went to San Bernardino, and the first comment that he made was how dirty our air was due to our industrialization. The air here in this region is getting worse due to the geography of this region, since it's a valley. As you already heard, the people are slowly suffering from this toxic air, and the amount of people struggling with medical issues from this air is greatly increasing. I would like to stress that we can no longer tolerate the industry that pollutes our homes and schools. I currently live in the city of Loma Linda in San Bernardino, and at night, there is usually a huge line of trucks that come by the main street and block traffic near the residential area that I live in. So electrification for our commercial vehicles is what our region needs for a green economy and bold solutions in our backyard for cleaner air. I urge the South Coast Air Quality Management District Governing Board to uphold its commitment to protect our air quality and health by creating a strong indirect source rule. We need a stronger push so that way our air would be more tolerable. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Yasi Kavinzende? Did I butcher that? You can correct me when he gets through testifying.
Okay. Hello, members of the governing board. My name is Diana Contreras, and I live in the city of Rancho Cucamonga. I'm here because our families and communities deserve to have a clean air quality for today, tomorrow, and the future. The quality of air is making us sick, which has contributed to people suffering from breathing conditions. As to some families in the community, they themselves or the members of their families suffer from breathing conditions like asthma, bronchitis, or lesser known conditions like laryngosma. There are some people who develop breathing condition from continuously breathing dirty air. My mother suffers from the condition that is laryngosma. Laryngosma is which is where there's a sudden seizing or closing of the vocal cords upon breathing, and it leads to the blockage of airflow into the lungs, and so it's like asthma. So whenever the air quality declines, my mother becomes vulnerable because she has a harder time breathing, and there's been a few occasions when her windpipe has suddenly closed, and she makes this noise as she's suffocating. And so the hard thing is my younger siblings get to see this. And although some doctors say it's not a severe threat to her life, there's been one time she went unconscious. So just letting you guys know. In all, we have to breathe this air, so the decision this board makes will either improve the quality of health your constituents deserve, or will continue as is because we cannot tolerate trucks that pollute near our homes and schools running on dirty gas and diesel. We cannot accept half solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, it's Kavezadeh, by the way.
I'm sorry.
Kavezadeh.
I'll have it right next time.
No worries. It's
No, I
third
may
time's
not
a
have it
charm.
right, but I'll
I remember
do
one-
better.
Okay, no worries. Happy New Year to everybody.
New
Good
Year to
morning. Grateful to be here. I really appreciate all the speakers from the public that went up before me, and everyone who took time from the public to be here today, and all of you for your essence and energy today. My name is Yasi, and I'm a resident of Riverside, and I'm also a representative with the My Generation campaign. I came with an amazing group of youth activists from the Inland Empire, specifically in the Riverside Paris region. And don't worry, they're not missing class, they're not missing work. I hope we get to be on time for your shift, Ricky. I know you got to get there on time, but they are high school students, and they inspire me to be here today, actually. And we're here because we hope we can continue the momentum on a strong rule for indirect sources like warehouses. And not only does this impact our economy or the economic bottom line of businesses, we believe that this rule can impact our public health. And it shouldn't be looked at as a tax on businesses, but an opportunity to shift industry towards equitable clean energy electrification of transportation. That is a mouthful, but I believe we can do it, and we're here for this year to show that this is urgent to us and that we need to show up as much as possible. Clean air is better for business and workers as well as residents and families. Today, our region experiences high rates of poverty while breathing bad air. So this issue is, again, crucial and urgent for us. In this state of California, we're leading the way on green energy and green businesses, and we hope you all can come up and hold our values. We will do our best to come through and be present with future working group and meetings and opportunities based off of work and school schedules. And I look forward to working with you all, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Hello, good morning. I'm Hannah Velez. I'm 17 years old, and I'm the president of Young Medical Scholars at New View Bridge Early College High School. I have been a resident of Paris, California for the past 8 years, and I've grown, so has my city. I'd like to say that we both have turned out all right, except I'd be lying to you. I turned out fine, but Paris has been infested with an ever-growing buildup of factories and warehouses near our homes and schools. My family moved to Paris not just because of the affordable housing, but to give my little sister a better quality of life. We came from Anaheim. After not living there for years and developing this outsider's view, I came to drive up on this place, and to see the cloud of smog hovering over the city, it's terrifying. We came to Paris because it was open and beautiful. Now we're promised a future of warehousing and pollution. I want to stay in my community and work towards a healthy future for all. As a president of Young Medical Scholars, we try to inform and advise our peers of opportunities that are available into potentially advancing ourselves in the medical field. I hope that one day I can become a doctor and give back to the people in my community. This topic about clean and sustainable energy is important to me because growing up, I suffered from asthma. And I know how difficult it is for a child and their parents growing up with this condition. When I was younger, I attended numerous doctor visits because of my condition, and I had to carry my inhaler everywhere I went. And I was attentive of what I was doing because anything could potentially trigger my asthma. With this fear, I come to you all today to take a stand to take better care of our community so that this terrible air quality doesn't affect any more unsuspecting children. I hope that you all can do the right thing and increase the access to transport and electrification for our region. We need a green economy future, and I believe a strong indirect source rule can do that. Thank you guys all for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Ricardo Hernandez? And would Ricardo Calabero come to the other microphone?
Good morning, and I first want to say Happy New Year. Hello, my name is Ricardo Hernandez, and I live in the city of Paris. I'm here because our community should have access to zero emissions and transportation, electrification investments for clean air and sustainable future. I am currently a student at New View Bridge Early College High School. I am involved in various positions from National Honor Society to California Scholarship Federation, Young Medical Scholars, Sierra Club, and the list goes on. All these clubs and organizations that I am a part of have one thing in common, and that is that in some way, shape, or form, we find ways to help our community, whether that be fundraising for cancer research to walking out in protest of gun violence. I am here because I am a youth activist that is invested in my peers' future and is witnessing the damaging effects that is affecting my community. And I will be calling myself a hypocrite if I didn't wake up at 6 in the morning to represent my peers' health and future. As a 17-year-old student, barely spreading my wings, I am afraid and appalled that my future is slowly being poisoned and no one is doing anything to save it. We are ignoring and putting this epidemic aside because we prioritize money and profit over health. Our health should not be categorized as a privilege or a luxury, but a basic human right. In December of last year, Omar, House Representative, tweeted, and I quote, "We won't give up the fight for a hashtag Green New Deal because we need clean water in the future. We need clean air in the future. Our children, their children need a home, and this planet is the only one we've got." It doesn't matter what your ethnic, social, or economic background we identify ourselves as, because bad air quality affects us all, and unfortunately higher in communities of color. It affects anyone and everyone, from youth to senior citizens. The movement has already begun. Let's not get left behind. California is leading the country in providing clean energy and transportation. The Inland Empire has so much potential to grow this progress. I hope that we can support a strong indirect source rule in our community on zero emissions we can really change the identity and provide more new jobs. I just want to say that you are looking at the future, and I will continue to fight for my peers and my community for strong solutions for a healthier environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Your name for the record, sir.
Good morning, my name is Ricardo Caballero, and I am 17 years old, currently living in Paris, California. I live in an area in which it feels like there is a warehouse in every corner. Some might think that these warehouses are positively impacting us because they are creating new job opportunities, but that is a wrong assessment. Many of the jobs provide barely livable wages and contribute to our air pollution. This pollution is impacting our health negatively. Gas and diesel trucks don't just stay in one place, they travel across our inland empire. Breathing polluted air puts you at a higher risk for asthma and other respiratory diseases. Diesel trucks are coming out of warehouses near houses and schools, which affects children and people living even miles away. In my experience, I have a neighbor that owns his own truck, and every time that truck is parked in their front yard, I get the worst smell ever. I can 100% say that this smell makes me not even want to step outside, not even to get the mail. So today I encourage you all to not forget about us in the Inland Empire and that we need a strong indirect source rule and study that looks at our health. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Parks?
Hello, my name is Jesse Parks and I live in the city of Riverside. I am here because I believe our communities should invest in zero emissions and transportation electrifications in order to have clean air and a sustainable future. As a student and youth climate activist that has co-founded the Zero Hour Movement, a movement dedicated to combating climate change, I believe it is critical that our economy and schools invest in clean energy and clean transportation. In recent years, several warehouses have been under construction just a couple of miles away from my campus of 600 students. The seemingly never-ending construction has produced toxic smog-infused air that has invaded me and my classmates' lungs. Everyday activities such as walking to our next period classes or attending after-school sports practice has become more of a burden than an opportunity for personal and academic growth. The South Coast Air Quality Management District Governing Board can eliminate the poisoning of students and dramatically decrease the number of fatalities caused by our horrendous air quality by supporting a strong indirect sources rule. To the individuals in this room who are too cowardly to denounce the warehouse's industry's inability to prioritize people over profit, I really ask you to consider the monumentally positive effects of clean energy and clean transportation will cause if implemented. To the thousands of students countywide, it means once again we can benefit from the system meant to expand our potential, not harm us. Again, I strongly urge the South Coast Air Quality Management District Governing Board to uphold its commitment to protect our air quality and health of the public by supporting a strong indirect sources rule. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you all as we ensure better air quality for Riverside County.
Thank you for your testimony.
Good morning, board members. My name is Cynthia Simonton, and I've lived on 4th and Mazzella for 51 years. Since 1967, I lived on the corner of 4th and Mazzella, which is my mother's home. In 1999, I purchased my grandparents' home, which is 3 houses away from my mother's home on Mazzella. Growing up in Avocado Heights, my brother and I would play with our friends all the time in the creek where we were growing up, not realizing all the toxic chemicals that were being dumped from Cometco there. When my 2 sisters were of age and could play with us, they would also go down there and play. I was diagnosed in the early 80s with thyroid cancer. I had my thyroid removed and several lymph nodes. When I was diagnosed, I was pregnant with my first daughter. After my thyroid was removed, I was asked if I planned to have any more children. If I did, I would be a high risk. I did have my second daughter, and by the grace of God, she was born with all her fingers and her toes and was healthy. I was also diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in 2003. I hurt every day, some days worse than others. People don't realize how much pain I'm in because I refuse to let myself go. I still put on my makeup every day, do my hair, and go to work in spite of my pain. My sister Rose was also diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and I know of 4 other girls all around our same age that grew up in that same area with the same thyroid cancer. My 2 other daughters, Eileen, age 35, and my Stephanie, age 29, were raised here also, and now their children, my grandchildren, 3 girls and 1 boy, are still being raised there. I had the soil testing done on them and the toenail clippings, and one of my granddaughters, the high level came back on the arsenic. My mother also suffers from rheumatoid arthritis and spinal stenosis, and my daughter Stephanie, the 29-year-old, has a nodule that's being monitored by her doctor. As I investigated more about Quemeco and have been involved in these meetings, I truly believe that Quemeco is responsible for all our health issues. I know that they say they're following all the OSHA requirements, but the plant is still doing damage to all our lives that live there. I have a beautiful home and I don't want to move, and I hope that one day when I do pass, it's because I want it on my own time, not Quemeco helping me to go sooner, that one of my children can live in my home, and we're just hoping that we can have them be forced, that you guys don't renew their business license and that they can be forced to go somewhere else to continue on doing their business. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Eder?
Hello again. I'm Harvey Eder, talking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition. With these youngsters talking, that reminds me of something I said to you a few months ago about Neil Young. He's added a couple years ago words to Rockin' in the Free World. When talking about oil, he says, got to show the children we just don't care. We keep on burning it and put it in the air. We got to stop it. When I was born here. My mom was born here. We go back over 100 years. When I was 9 years old, I had pneumonia and pleurisy, air pollution, lungs. When I was 18, I also had pneumonia again. I lived out of the area for a long time, but I've been here a long time. This $61 million that we tried to get a hold of for solar conversion included the BYD and the 5,000 trucks a year, Class 8 solar electric trucks, and the indirect source route going to these warehouses. We're trying to get all the information and details on the warehouses and to convert them to solar on their roofs or near them, and where use is going to happen. You know, staff says, oh, we don't want to push this thing. We can't do it too fast. Well, look what we got. There is now there's a study going on in the city of LA for an emergency climate department. And I talked to the guy who was like kind of the point person there with the councilman Corrett's office. And he told me, he said, hey, a couple of my friends committed suicide. And that's what kind of spurred me. These shootings we got in our culture and stuff, I relate it to the climate. They've got new psych diagnosis now. I don't know if it's what is it, DMS, but it's, you know, people concerned about what's happening, the big picture. And we need legislation. Now they're trying to keep these IOUs, PG&E, Edison and stuff, you know, going. It doesn't work. We got to stop this legislation. Hill from Burlingame had 8 people killed when the gas lines exploded. Now we got the fires and all this other stuff. We can't let this legislation go through, and the subsidizing of the PUC studying how to keep PG&E going.
I agree with that.
So the legislative and everything, CAPCOA has got to be put and worked locally, and on this effort, it's got to be done. I'd like to work with you and folks on it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Avila?
Good morning. My name is Maria Avila. I am a resident of Hacienda Heights for the past 9 years. I have 3 children that I am raising in Hacienda Heights, and they are the reason why I'm here. I'm here to ask that the board members not allow for Quemeco to increase production by 25%. I feel that this should not even have been considered in the first place, considering that they were asked to run all kinds of testing. It took them 3 years to start and do soil sampling, and due to community pressure, we finally got some of the results in December, and I feel that there is still not sufficient information as far as the impact to the surrounding community to have this 25% increase approved. There's so many factors that go into it: transportation, air quality. I am within a couple of steps away from them. I can open my window every morning and see the white steam coming out of their buildings, and it's scary. It's scary to live in the area, and it's scary to know that they are going to be allowed to do more damage to the community. I would like to have more data on this before this gets approved. In hearing this information here today, everyone wants to go clean and everyone loves electric vehicles, and believe me, I am the one person that's always recycling everything and anything. I love our earth, and I would love to have clean air and electric vehicles, but I would also like to raise a question to the board members. Quemeco's been in this community since, not Quemeco, but the actual building's been here since 1959. And as we have vehicles that are battery operated and electric and all this, Quemeco is the highest, largest company to recycle batteries west of the Mississippi. And although they're supposed to be very clean in the way that they do this, as we have more electric vehicles and batteries from 10 years ago that need to be recycled, I don't want to have to have that in my backyard. What is the board members doing to support all of these millions of batteries that are coming up for recycling, or that are from 10 years ago that need to be dealt with? What is our state, our government, what are we doing to have another facility far away from my community that can support this, and I don't have to suffer the consequences of living a couple of steps away from a battery recycling plant? What are we doing for future recycling of batteries? Because we're recycling for other countries. We're recycling for companies from all over the world. We are doing it here, Quemeco, and they're right outside my backyard. As we move forward with electric vehicles and solar panels, and I know those solar panels have some sort of battery where you can store your power, all of those things will need to be recycled in the future or dealt with. What are we doing for future generations?
It's very, very powerful testimony. It's a great questions. And I think it was more than worth your time to come here and talk to us today, because I think you made an impact.
I just want to share with you that the clippings of the nails of my children were done with SCAQMD Medical Center.
All you need to do
Out of
today.
87 kids,
But you can leave that with
my
us.
kid's the third one on top. That's why I'm here.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. Alex, are you here, or did you leave? How about Mr. Chen?
William had to leave, but he said I could speak for him.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure.
My name is Rebecca Overmeyer Velasquez. Good morning again. William wanted me to let you know, this is also about the Quemeco facility. He had to go to work, but he did register his name, and he has his contact information with you all if you want to follow up with him, which I think would be good, because he's a resident of Hacienda Heights. He says he's here to oppose the proposed expansion of the Quemeco battery recycling plant. They have repeatedly violated the laws in handling toxic substances, and his own experience, and this is really important, is that he, on weekends especially, sees and smells the these noxious odors coming out of the facility. He has contacted AQMD to complain, and when he calls, they say to him that there's no corresponding emission record for the time that he reported. And that he says this happens often on weekends, and that there are these smells coming out of the facility. And so that's something that we would really encourage AQMD to follow up on. You know, they're not a good neighbor. They're not a good neighbor. I mean, DTSC has just ordered the facility to remove contaminated soil. This is at hazardous waste levels just outside the facility, and Quemeco is appealing that. A basic order just to remove toxic hazardous waste, and they're not even complying with that. Everything with Quemeco is litigation and resistance to any kind of public health measures to protect the community. The earlier sampling results that DTSC did, they found that in the industrial and commercial areas immediately outside the facility, they found levels of lead in the soil over 1,000 parts per million, which is the level considered hazardous waste. And that's what DTSC has ordered Quemeco to clean up, and they're resisting that. They're appealing that. They are a really bad neighbor. We don't want them around, and we definitely don't want them to expand production by 25%. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. That concludes our testimony on this item, not this item, but public comment. Do we have closed session?
Yes, sir.
Okay, would you give us some magic words to send us to closed session?
Yes, sir. It is necessary for the board to recess to closed session pursuant to Government Code Sections 54956.9 sub A and 54956.9 sub D sub 1 to confer with its counsel regarding pending litigation which has been initiated formally and to which the SCAQMD is a party. The actions are in the matter of SCAQMD v. Aircraft Heat Treating Co. and Anaplex Corp., SCAQMD Hearing Board Case Number 6066-1, Order for Abatement, SCAQMD.
I want to test something on the voting machine. Could you open the roll? Okay, vote no, Clark.
SCAQMD v. Anaplex, Los Angeles Superior
Okay.
Court Case Number
Thank you.
BC 608-8322, Paramount Hexavalent Chromium. Communities for a Better Environment v. South Coast Air Quality Management District, Los Angeles Superior Court Case Number BS 169841, Safe Fuel and Energy Resources California et al. V. South Coast Air Quality Management District, Los Angeles Superior Court Case Number BS 169923, Tesoro. People of the State of California, XREL, SCAQMD v. Exide Technologies, Inc., Los Angeles Superior Court Case Number BC 533528, INRI Exide Technologies, Inc., U.S. Bankruptcy Court, District of Delaware Case Number 13-11482, KJC, bankruptcy case. Also, it is necessary for the board to recess to closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 sub D sub 2 to confer with its counsel because there is significant exposure to litigation in the SCAQMD. One case, letter from Stephen J. Olson, O'Melveny and Myers LLP on behalf of Exxon Mobil Corporation, dated August 22nd, 2018. A report of any reportable actions taken during closed session will be provided to the clerk of the board. The meeting is adjourned.